I felt like it was kind of a perfect storm. Everything that could go wrong in my life kind of did. Immediately, I said to God, I will take that list times 1,000 just to still get a chance at being able to overcome. As you continue to look for more and more things to be grateful for, eventually you turn towards being grateful for the things that are challenging and the things that have hurt you. I can do this, and I don't care what it takes. I don't care how hard it gets. I don't care, the trials and tribulations that lay ahead of me, if they're double, triple, 5 times as hard as they have been. Like, I know what it takes now.
All right, welcome to the Rad Dad Podcast. This is episode 39. I have Wright here. So the way we met's actually kind of interesting because about 2 months after I started the podcast, I promised myself that if I had the feeling to talk to a stranger, I would just do it. And that's kind of how I met you.
Yeah.
Like, I'd seen your social media and stuff, but I saw you at the football game and just approached you and started talking.
Yep.
Happy to have you on, though.
Oh, it's good to be on.
So just to start off, talk to me about like a few highlights from your childhood and your
Well, before I say that, it's actually another kind of crazy story. I was not having the best night that night, and I was at home alone. Like, I think I had some plans bail on me or something, and I just went over to the game just because I was like kind of bored, and I was like, just went over there. That's why I was sitting by myself, just watching some football. But so it's kind of crazy. A little bit about my childhood. I was born in Payson, April 8, 1997. My mom and dad got divorced right around when I was like 4 years old. They had me and my little brother Derek. My mom pretty much lived around my dad up here in Utah County, like Springville, Spanish Fork area, for most of the time growing up until my mom got remarried right around when I was like 14 or 15. And then we chose to go move down and live with her down in Manti, and where she got, where the guy that she remarried lived at, actually in Sterling, which is like population like 120. Mm-hmm. But I loved it. Like, it's just, got to be a kid, there's nothing but fields and dirt out there. So we got some dirt bikes and got some scrapes and broke some bones, and I feel like for the first time kind of develop as an athlete. I feel like me and my brother were late bloomers athletically or physically. I mean, even by the time I graduated high school, I was only about 6 foot, $170 soaking wet, and now I'm like 6'1", 210, and he's about like almost 6'1", about 205, 200, and so I don't know, like it was a good time, and especially just kind of getting to live down there and all the friends that I made. And
yeah, I wish every kid had the opportunity to experience like kind of the Manti setting, the country boy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially boys, like I feel like they just need to be out in the mountains, riding dirt bikes, building jumps, like just being kids, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably a pretty good balance for you. So with moving in with your mom and becoming an athlete and stuff, not living with your dad, how did yours and your dad's relationship continue to develop?
Honestly, I feel like that was kind of the point at which it didn't. But even living a week on, week off, all growing up between my mom and dad, like, it was very strained. It always kind of was. I mean, my dad did have a lot of influence on my life, and he's taught me a lot of things, done a lot for me, and I appreciate it. And but whenever you come from a broken home, there's always going to be things you miss out on, and things that I feel like don't develop fully. Things that you definitely need as a young man growing up and kind of embarking on your journey as a young man, and just what the world throws at you. And so I had a lot of those things, but then of course when I moved down with my mom, it was kind of like those things kind of stopped just because we didn't see him as often. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely strained, and there's definitely, I feel like, a divide grew between us for sure.
So where did athletics play into all this, because being 14 and doing stuff like that can be heavy.
Yeah. Athletics were always a big avenue of just getting away from like the home and just the antics of what were happening in the background of our lives. And me and my brother always loved playing sports, and that was always something that we were always pretty good at. But more so in high school, when I actually started playing a lot better and actually started realizing that I had some potential to be a decent athlete. No, it just it gave me just an escape, you know, and was something for me that I always looked forward to. And it was one of the things that, like, when it was ending, like when football ended, I was obviously distraught in high school because I for sure didn't think I would ever play football again. And even when baseball ended, you know, we took state my senior year, and I still was like distraught. I was like, man, I love this stuff, and it's been something for me that has been able to allow me to kind of escape from reality and just the things I'm dealing with back home. And so that's what kind of the purpose it served for me, I feel like, in high school.
So take me through your athletic journey post high school to now.
So after high school, I chose to serve an LDS mission. I had like some things that I had to take care of, and it took me a little longer to get out on my mission than other kids. And then I went out on my mission to Houston, Texas, served for about a year, and then, you know, kind of had I would call it a revelation of things that I needed to speak to my mission president about as I kind of grew in knowledge, because my knowledge of the gospel was so limited all growing up. I mean, there were a lot of spurts of just, what's it called? Inactivity as far as going to church attendance and things like that. Like, I mean, I didn't ever go to Boy Scouts. I didn't ever go to Young Men's. I don't even think I really graduated seminary. I think they might have given me like 3 years worth. And I might have read like 11 chapters of the Book of Mormon before I went on my mission. But it was just something I knew. I had a testimony. I knew that God was there, and that's kind of the extent of what I went and served for. And so as I kind of learned and as I kind of grew spiritually, it was something that I knew, some things I knew I needed to speak to my mission president about. They elected to send me home for 6 months. It was during that 6 months in spring of 2017 that I walked on at Snow College with my little brother Derek, and we just kind of walked on one day, and we both he started out as a wide receiver. I started out as safety. The position coach I had at that time thought I was so bad that he wouldn't even let me practice. Like, he would literally, like, almost not even let me do the drills, but he never gave me any reps in practice. Finally, one day I was like, you know what, I'm just going to switch to offense, try and get some reps on offense as wide receiver. That's way better than just standing here and watching everyone else get reps. And from that day, he kind of put out a bounty on my head, my safeties coach, and told all the other kids in the room, which they relayed to me, that he said, that kid's so terrible, he won't play at this level or any other level after that. And finished out the spring as a wide receiver, went back out on my mission, finished the year that I had left, came back to Snow, and chose to play wide receiver again because the guy was still there. Tore my meniscus first week of fall camp, so I had to redshirt that year. That safeties coach left, and in the start of the spring of 2019, I switched back to safety just on my own. Didn't tell anyone. None of the coaches even noticed that I was there anyway, so I just did it on my own. Ended up really balling out in the spring. Thought I'd set myself up pretty good for the fall, but when I came back in the fall, there was like another couple kids that had came in, different defensive staff, and they just kind of had their guys that they'd picked out, and I was balling, doing really well. And it was actually the head coach now down at Snow, Coach Erickson, that he was my position coach, my new one. He's from Spanish Fork. And didn't find this out until at the end of the season, after I got offered as a preferred walk-on by BYU, that it was Jan Jorgensen, who's now I think he just went to New Mexico State. but he was our D coordinator. He told me at the end of the season, he's like, you have a lot for, to thank from Coach Erickson for this, because that man almost lost his job for you during fall camp. Like, that's how hard he stood on the table for you. I didn't want you out there. The head coach didn't want you out there. Andrew Mitchell did not want you out there, and he almost lost his job. Like, there were some screaming matches that took place over you, but after you went out that first game against Garden City, which is the number 2 ranked team in the country, and put up 10 tackles as a safety after not even starting, like, he was kind of unanimous after that. So I have him to thank a lot for that. But then obviously got my preferred walk-on to BYU. Chose to go there and play. Turned down a bunch of other like FCS scholarship offers and a couple other D1 offers from like UMass and University of Ohio. But chose to go there, and spent a year, played there the first year, special teams, played in the spring, and then going into my next year is when I had my suicide attempt, which I like posted about on social media, and I talked to you a little bit about.
So you played during the COVID year?
Yeah, right? During COVID year in 2020. For what?
Little dance?
Oh yeah, it was like first game I think against Troy. Like the stadium was empty, and so I was like, there was no hype coming from the fans, obviously nowhere, and so like they were playing music. It was the first time I'd heard that heard of their tradition of playing like Turbulence during end of third quarter or whatever, and I just went crazy and started doing all these dance moves, and there's only so many people to put the camera on, and I started like dancing a lot. I got on like Overtime, ESPN had it on like part of their college game day opening segment and stuff. But yeah, I was kind of known for dancing a little bit before, but especially after that, and maybe that's all I'll be known for from BYU. But yep.
So do you want to continue through your college career, or do you want to pause and go to 2021?
I mean, the rest of my college career is, well, I'll talk about the other stuff because then it kind of, yeah. So with my attempt, that happened on August 12th, 2021, and just kind of leading up to it, I felt like it was kind of a perfect storm. Everything that could go wrong in my life kind of did. I was just a really scared, confused kid, and I didn't realize how scared and how confused and how just how many things that I was fighting like deep down until kind of now and after the fact. There had been a lot of things happen with like my family leading up and then going into my last semester of football down at Snow College. It was kind of a fight. Some things were said amongst all parties, and ended up going down there on my own. I had to pay my whole way that last semester, which meant I had to pay for my rent, tuition, because I was still a walk-on, even though I was a starter and started on every special teams unit. The head coach still chose to give scholarships to kids that held my water all season, and that pissed me off, but it fueled me to keep going, and those kids never even ended up playing. But I had to work graveyard shifts at a boys' home over in Manti from like 10 at night to 6 in the morning. Yeah, because Snow was in Ephraim. This is when I was at Snow, my last semester at Snow. So I was working like 3 or 4 graveyard shifts a night while having weights at 6:30 in the morning. So I'd get done with work at 6, go straight to weights at 6:30, go home, might take a nap for about 2.5 hours, was about the time until I had class. Then I'd go to class for 2 hours, go home, take another 2.5 hour nap, and then I'd get ready and go to meetings, practice, eat, do whatever errands I need. And if I worked 2 days in a row, then I'd go to sleep right around like 7, wake up at like 9:30, and then go to work. And so that was like without contact really from my brother, my dad, my mom. I mean, my mom reached out to me really quick after, the altercation, told me how sorry she was and how bad she felt, and she wanted to support me and stuff. And so she was kind of around a little bit. But other than that, I mean, even in my apartment, I didn't have a bed. I slept on the floor or the couch. Or sometimes if my roommate was gone and I didn't tell him, I'd sleep on his bed, just desperate. I lost a lot of weight because I didn't really have enough money for food. And lost probably about 15 pounds during that semester of playing. And so that'll just kind of like mess a kid up, honestly, when I felt like so much of what I went down there to do and like how like the success, I've always felt like I haven't had a lot of people in my corner believe in me. So it felt like to me the success that I wanted to have and that I knew I could achieve, I wanted to give it to the people that were closest to me, which is my family, my dad, my brother, my mom. I've always wanted to make them proud, and to not have the belief or the love I feel, or the affection that I feel like I wanted, that all of us as kids, especially teenagers, young adults, we still crave. I went without that. And so carried that into an unhealthy relationship to kind of, account or to compensate for the lack of love that I was receiving from.
Looking for it in other places.
Yeah, you look for it in other places to just fill a void. And so that's what I did. I tried to save a girl that didn't want to save herself and spent a lot of energy and time doing that and lost a lot of myself and who I was in the process. And that's when I got to BYU, that's kind of how I showed up. I was in a very low position and state, and spiritually, mentally, physically. I mean, I just had to put weight back on that I'd lost, and just trying to figure out how to navigate all those things. And obviously never really confronted it, carried on to it into another relationship where it was the same thing. She, I just did too much when, I should have just taken care of myself and done right by myself and by God. And that's not how I chose to handle things.
Did you feel like you were burying all these feelings, or was there just so much going on in your life that you didn't even have room to deal with it?
No, I was burying it for sure. As I kind of, strayed from the Lord, which I feel like was obviously my first mistake. But I compensated in other ways, like my vice has always been like intimacy with girls, and I've never drank, smoked, done any of those things. But again, like the tender love and affection that I wanted, I'd look for in that way, like in talking to girls and having them over, and that's how I chose to fill the void. But like that's just an empty that will just can make you feel even more empty as time goes. And so that's what I kept trying to do to fill the hole and fill the void. And first season actually went pretty good for only playing like special teams. Like I felt like I set myself up good to, be able to contest in the next season. But January of 2021, the only kid that I trained on my mission took his life. Samoan kid from West Valley named Neil Tua jumped in front of the front runner that night in January, and that really messed me up even more, just because of how things were going in my life. And just kind of kept going downhill from there. Got in some trouble over a Tinder girl on a trip down to St. George with the boys, and just said some things that went viral, and just one thing after another. And that's why I kind of said it was like a perfect storm leading up to that fateful day when I attempted to take my life, where just everything that felt like it could go wrong in my life did. And I was alone enough and didn't reach out to anyone, that my mind was able to take itself to a place where you are able to make an attempt like that. I mean, I was a gunshot wound to the chest. Like that's not just something you just do randomly. Like it was something that like your mind, you have to become delusional enough.
There's a lot of small choices that lead up to that.
Oh yeah. And that morning I went and talked to the therapist that I'd been talking to for many weeks, months. Told him that I had a plan to take my life, told him I wanted to take my life, and he still let me walk out of that room that day. And my next stop straight from there was my dad's work. Went in there and went to his office, and it was empty. And I called him. I said, "Hey, are you at lunch right now?" And found out that he was in Hawaii with the rest of my family. And I was like, I broke down to him crying like, "Hey, I'm not doing good, and I don't want to be here anymore," and things like that. And he kind of talked to me for a second, but kind of to no avail. I feel like the damage had already been done mentally at that point. And then I just went and sat in the Provo Temple parking lot for probably about 3-4 hours. It only felt like minutes, though, like my mind was just racing. And ultimately just did what I did, and it's kind of crazy. But
so after the action was taken, do you have memory? Were you conscious?
Yeah, so in the moment, like when I pulled the trigger, I remember being very calm the whole time. Like leading up to it, I was pretty hysterical, and I remember just asking myself, like, if I can't think of a reason to be here in the next 10 seconds, like I don't want to do this, keep doing this. And I remember just like my body just kind of calming down, and it was just like that. But after the gun went off in my car, in the small confines of my car, it's very loud. My equilibrium went out the window first thing. And I remember everything just spinning around me until I kind of came back to reality and realized the severity of what I'd just done. I'd lost complete feeling in my left arm right away, couldn't move it. Luckily, my phone was in the cup holder next to me. I grabbed it, dialed 911, tried to remain as calm as I could, speaking to dispatch until they got there. Because I just knew the more I panicked, the more I freaked out, the more I was going to bleed, and the worse it was going to be, the less my chances were going to be to survive. Which every suicide survivor, if you talk to one, if you find one that's willing to talk about it, or if you just even look up some interviews of people that have like survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, they will talk about a feeling of wanting to live the moment their hand leaves the rail, the moment their foot leaves the edge of the cliff building that they're standing on, the moment their finger squeezes the trigger. And it's all synonymous. And at that point, though, it's not really up to you. You've made your choice, and you're at the fate of God and what He will. And so I wanted to live, and all the list of reasons that I felt that I'd created in my mind of why I didn't want to be there. Immediately, I said to God, I said, I will take that list times 1,000 just to still get a chance at being able to overcome the list of trials and problems that I have yet to face in this life, whatever they may be. Like, I just want to live.
So this is all going through your brain.
Yeah.
Immediately after. And I was like, because I'm just sitting there, I'm trying to talk to dispatch, I'm just thinking about, I'm bleeding out. Was there like a oh crap moment? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, you're like, but again, I tried to curve that with understanding that the more I panicked, the more like I was, sat there in shock, the more I was going to just bleed and pump myself to death. But it was when I first saw the first patrol car pull up that I kind of got more emotional. I started crying, and I was telling them on the phone, like, I see them, like, please just tell them to come here. But they had to obviously create a perimeter, secure the area first. I had a firearm. So she's asking me, where's the firearm? She's relaying that. Okay, it's in the passenger seat. Squad car pulled up on the grass behind me, opened the back right door first, asked me where the gun was, said it's in the front seat. And as soon as he'd grabbed the gun, my driver's door got ripped open. They went to work, cutting my clothes off, kind of pressed against my chest. I felt and heard a whoosh of air come out of the entrance wound, and that was kind of when, I didn't know this, but they told me my lung had been collapsed or been hit. I'd punctured my lung, and they leaned me forward, and that was like the first time I'd really like felt a lot of pain just moving. But I also had lost complete feelings in my lower limbs, like, and I started to lose feeling in my right arm too. Like everything was numb. And they said, "Okay, we need to get you out of the car." And I was like, "I can't move." And so they had to, one person from my right armpit, the other person in my left armpit, kind of yank me out of the car, put me on the stretcher, and get me loaded in the ambulance. And I remember the whole thing very vividly, and I honestly forced myself to think about the moment a lot, just so that I can talk to people like you and other people, and just be calm, have it just kind of speak about it matter of factly, like it happened. I feel like one of the reasons why trauma is created in a lot of people is because they create, a separate place in their mind for that event. And that creates a lot of issues. So I feel like the more that I've just gone back to that moment, forced myself to walk through every moment, I'm just able to speak about it, not get emotional about it. But there's a couple of things that I can remember very distinctly. One was all the people that had been out on the temple grounds that day. I remember looking over on the side of the stretcher as everyone, like all the faces of these people that were lined up, and I saw the kids that I'd just seen playing with their dads like 30 seconds before.
So this is during the daytime?
This is during the daytime. It was about like 3:30 in the afternoon. And I'd seen all these people on their faces and just like the look of concern and confusion. And like you go from just being someone that's sitting there watching, looking at the temple, maybe praying, playing with your kids or whatever. First time I lost consciousness or kind of felt like I had an out-of-body experience was after I got loaded up in the ambulance. And I remember thinking like, okay, like they have me, like I'm in good hands now, like as safe as I'm going to get. Now it's just if I get to the hospital and if I've, if there's irreparable damage to my heart, whatever. But I was like kind of like relaxed for a second, released, and felt like I had an out-of-body experience. I remember just closing my eyes and just seeing this very bright light and feeling it was very warm. And remember feeling that I could move closer or further from the light. And the closer I got to it, the warmer and more brighter it got, obviously. And for whatever reason, the following thought in my head was, I have control, like I have agency to move closer towards this light, which discernibly I could make out to only be God. And the next question that I asked myself was, if God is still giving me the agency to choose to come closer to him in this moment and to truly leave this earth and to go back to him, or give me the opportunity to go back to the earth, surely there has to be something that I have yet to do that I need to do, or that he will provide a way for me to be able to achieve. And I remember in that moment, like I can't, my eyes opened up. The ambulance doors swung open and they sent me into the hospital. It was a couple minutes after I got in there, after they'd moved my arm up, they had to cut open my ribs, stick a tube in there to drain all the internal bleeding, and to kind of assess like the damage from the entrance and exit wounds and stuff. That my cousins Spencer and Jacob showed up first, and then my dad's best friend growing up, Andy Haskell, and it was him, and I believe it was my cousins were there as well, and the chaplain at the hospital. They gave me a blessing. I remember I remember continuing to tell the hospital people and even the people in the ambulance, like, I need to talk to my mom. My mom, like, please can I call my mom? Her numbers, I kept saying her number over and over again. Talked to her on the phone for a second. Obviously she was hysterical, and the only thing I could say was like, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry. And that was all I really could say to everyone the first time I saw him. Like, I'm sorry. And after that, I remember going to the CAT scan machine, and I don't even remember coming out. Next thing I remember is I woke up in the ICU, surrounded by family members. I can't remember who was exactly there. I was on a lot of pain medications and things. But yeah, I mean, from there it was just kind of a fight. The first kind of day to to stay alive. I feel like breathing was really hard, very painful. I just remember just sweating to death. Like, just I think I lost like 10 pounds that week that I spent in the hospital easily. But yeah, it was crazy.
What was the first moment of true hope that you felt? You know, maybe in that first week, maybe afterward, you thought to yourself, like, yeah, I do got this. This will get better.
Probably that first night in the hospital. I mean, it was after everyone in my room my mom, I think, was in there, had fallen asleep. And I was just up. I think it was about 2 or 3 in the morning. And I remember just thinking and processing the whole situation. And one of the things I shared on my Instagram already was about this moment that I had where I envisioned like a 13 or 14-year-old version of myself. And I thought about what that kid would have thought about who he was now, 6, 7 years later. And, that was the first time I'd kind of really taken time to appreciate just how far I'd come in my life. I mean, like, I was never supposed to serve an LDS mission. Yeah. I was never supposed to play junior college football, let alone Division I football. I was never supposed to have the friends that I did or, be able to get a girlfriend because I was just this scared, puny little kid in junior high. I remember like just being very insecure about a lot of those things. I wasn't athletic. I wasn't handsome. I wasn't smart, funny, whatever, like none of those things. And to have been able to accomplish all the things that I had and to set myself up for the successes that I've had ever since and that I know that I'm going to have for the rest of my life was something that really gave me a lot of hope. And I just knew immediately, like, I can do this. And I don't care what it takes. I don't care how hard it gets. I don't care, the trials and tribulations that lay ahead of me, if they're double, triple, 5 times as hard as they have been. Like, I know what it takes now to get past those things and to create a mind that's made of metal, create a impenetrable perspective on life, an eternal perspective. And so that's just kind of been the process ever since, is just doing things that allow me to have that mind that's made of metal and to really alter my perspective to be able to handle, I feel like, anything, knock on wood, that comes my way in life.
I feel like because of your experience, you have maybe more insight than most people into gratitude. Talk to me about your perspective on that.
Well, gratitude, I feel like, is the first and main thing that really saved me going forward. And I'll always tell people that, like, there's levels to gratitude. And the first one is the one that your parents always tell you growing up. Like, be thankful for the things you have. Like, be grateful for your blessings, the food that you have on your stuff, like that. But then I feel like as you continue to look for more and more things to be grateful for, eventually you turn towards being grateful for the things that are challenging and the things that have hurt you in your life. The inconveniences that you've experienced, the challenges, the trials, the tribulations, all those things have been set up for you and prepared for you for eternity, for you to experience, for your benefit, for your good. And why would you not be grateful for them? I mean, it's essentially the reason why in the plan of salvation we even chose to come here and accept the plan of God and Jesus Christ, to even subject ourselves to these experiences in the first place. So how could you not be grateful for them? I mean, we are receiving an experience that all of the spirits, our spirit brothers and sisters that never received bodies, they'll never attain. They'll never get this experience. They'll never be able to progress eternally. They're done, And so with having that gratitude, it seriously makes everything that you go through seem so much more manageable and not easier, because it is just as hard. Like, I'm not going to tell you it's not, but manageable and more equipped with what you need to be able to get through the situation and come out better and come out on top, instead of letting it just heap on yourself and become heavy and unbearable.
I love that. Why is it so hard for us, especially as men, I feel like, to just be proud of ourselves?
I think obviously the great quote of comparison is the thief of joy. I think we obviously have a lot of ideas of what a strong man is, what a powerful man is. And you think of like Julius Caesar, you think of Hercules, you think of Chris Kyle, I don't know, just a bunch of different like people that you only see like from the outside, the things that they've accomplished or whatever. But internally, like, what were they going through, And I'm sure they were going through a lot of the same battles that we are. It's just like that side of the story isn't as appealing to people, And obviously, it's not as appealing to women. It's not as appealing to other men who fear you. And, like, oh, this guy, he's talking about what he's going through. He's talking about how something that he went through when he's younger affects him. Oh, he's vulnerable. One of the things, it's actually funny that you brought that up, and I'm talking about this right now because I saw this clip today of Sean Strickland, who's in the UFC, on a podcast with Theo Vaughn.
He's a wild man.
Sean Strickland is a wild man. That man will do anything. He doesn't care. He's the craziest man in the UFC, crazier than Conor McGregor, and he just seems like the ultimate badass. Like, this dude is impenetrable, but literally today I watched a video of him with Theo Vaughn talking, and he just breaks down talking about the trauma that he experienced when he was a kid. Yeah. He was sexually abused. The video I watched today, it was his teachers at school were taking his desks away because he kept falling asleep, but it was because he was up at 3 a.m. trying to defend himself, like standing on guard, making sure that no one could come in and touch him or do anything. And all of his teachers just labeled him as a screw up, as a lazy, just degenerate, kid that just all he wanted to do was rebel. But again, like, he's going through that quietly. Like, no one else has any idea that that's what he's going through. And arguably one of the strongest men alive or whatever, the dude that you would not want to run into a dark alley with, breaks down. He just starts bawling on this podcast. And he tells Theo Vaughn at the end, he's like, dude, I don't care if you post this or not. Like, this is the reality of what being a man is. And it's so true because, like, that's something that, like, in the old school way of being a man, you just would never talk about. Yeah. But where I hope and feel like society will progress to is being able to sit down arm in arm like how we are, and being able to talk about the things that aren't as pleasant to talk about, and just talk about them for what they are. Like, they happen. It's a reality. There's nothing that you can do or say to change it. So why would you want to just tuck it under a rug and just act like everything's hunky-dory when it's not? Yeah. And the opposite, the double-edged sword of that is you aren't helping other people that are actually going through that. Like, you're creating a facade, and you're creating this, idea that men don't go through hard stuff. Men don't struggle with things. And that's almost, honestly, just as damaging and dangerous as its counterpart, And so that's why I've chose to speak about the things that I have. That's why any kid that's called me randomly, DM me or whatever, I'll have a conversation with them. I don't care if I know them from Eve. Yeah. Like, I'll speak to them. I'll be as vulnerable, answer as many questions as they want, because I have everything to be grateful for with even being alive. Why would I deprive them of sharing something that could possibly save their life? And even if it doesn't, buys them some time, buys them 3 months, a day, a couple minutes. Like, you just don't know where someone's at and what you could possibly do and give to someone that needs it vitally,
Yeah, there's a quote that says most men live lives of quiet desperation. And on the podcast, we talk about fatherhood. It's the Rad Dad Podcast, but we also really focus on men's mental health. My belief is that the world needs more strong men. And to create strong men, you have to be able to see the other side. You have to be able to see the hardship, the suffering, because that's the refiner's fire. Yeah. That's what creates a strong man. I'm in the process of developing a few different online courses to help fathers. And I sent out a survey to everyone I know asking what topics to include that fathers need resources for. And one of them was talking with their children about suicide. I don't know how to approach that. I don't have experience. I wanted to get your insights into how do we talk to our children? How do we bring up this heavy topic of suicide?
I mean, obviously, like, I think the context is important. It's hard because you don't want to wait for someone close to them to take their life, to have a sit down and talk with them about it. But kids learn. I remember riding in the car with my mom one time when a song by, I think it was Sean Kingston, like, I don't want to try to sing. It was like, baby, you got me suicidal, suicidal, suicidal. Banger song. Like, still listen to it, one of my all-time favorites. But as I'm playing that song in the car, my mom rears up and she looks over at me. What are you playing? Turns off the radio or whatever. And I was like, why? What's wrong? And she just like kind of nipped it in the butt, didn't say anything about it. She's like, you don't talk about that. You don't sing about that, whatever. But that's like with a lot of things it could be sex. Like, parents don't like to talk to their kids about sex. They don't like to talk to their kids about drugs, when really it should be that you take, and again, I'm not a parent, so I'm speaking just out of hypothetically what most desirable for me. Speak to them before they have the ability to experience that themselves or create their own concept of what that thing may be or whatever. Because ultimately, like, the best form of prevention is preparation, and so speak to them about those things before they have the opportunity to see some porn at school. Some kid shows them some kid offers them a dub, a cigarette, a beer, whatever it may be. And so the same thing with suicide. It's like, it's such a very taboo thing, and it's very not spoken about. Obviously, one, because there is a side of suicide, speaking about it, that is kind of lethal in the event that in the aspect of you can create, I forget what the actual word of it, a word for it is, but I think they had an issue with it at like Harriman High School a couple of years ago, where ripple effect, and it's where it's not talked about in the way that it should. It's like it's not like they're not glorifying the kids for doing it or whatever. Yeah. They're not speaking about it in the right light. I don't know. I researched this a long time ago. I have to brush up, but you can start a ripple effect. So you do have to be careful in what context you do talk about it. Not talking about it in a favorable way, but also not talking about it in like not talking about it in like a condemnable way. So like a shameful, like, that person is stupid, that person is retarded for taking their life, not I mean, they're dead. What's the point of like hating on them or whatever? But when you talk about that with your kids, this person took their life. You know what that means? Like, oh no, I don't. Like, well, they left this earth by their choice, by some action. They might have taken too many of these drugs, and that's how, their spirit leaves their body. They're dead. They're no longer here with us anymore. And then, how do you think that could, like, how do you think someone could get to that point? Well, I'll tell you from experience, and obviously this is not just mine, but like anyone, there are going to be hard times in your life. Like, there are going to be times where you're faced with something. You could become paralyzed. You could lose a limb. You could lose your mom, your dad. You could lose someone very close to you, become terminally ill. any variable amount of things that could happen to you in this life. And those things that happen to you can be very discouraging. And if you haven't prepared yourself to be grateful for those things, and to, if I don't help you or whatever it may be, to help prepare you for when times get hard, when you do get sad, accepting those feelings is what they are, but not condemning yourself with them, and not thinking that it's a gutter in which you can't get out of. Like that, like there will always be a tomorrow, just make it to the next day, and make it to the next day, and we'll help you and we'll get you there. But don't ever think of that as an option or an avenue out. Like there's always going to be someone or something that can help you, and there's always something that we can do to be able to help you get out of that mindset and perspective that that's the choice that you have to make, because times are so hard, because it sucks in the moment.
Now that you have the knowledge and you're aware of the dark places that your mind is capable of, what do you do to stay away from that?
Obviously the first one is try and replace it. But I think even before replacing it, just being accepting of it. Accepting that it's normal to feel that way. Even with one of the issues that I've had in a couple of my past relationships is just was like lying and dishonesty and things like that. And so in the past, as I've tried to cultivate other relationships with other people, if the person's not responding, or if the person says something about me or just ghosts me or something like that, in the past, that's always been a very sensitive point in my life. And that can come from, my parents getting divorced when I was young, I think that's mostly what it stems from. But just accepting that they're their own person, they're going to do what they're going to do, and it's easier for you to just not be responsible for their actions. You don't know what they're going through. But just understand that you don't have to feel anxious about it or whatever. And so again, I think those are most of the things, just accepting it's normal to feel if someone says something hurtful to you, to feel sad about it, or if someone makes something up about you, to feel sad about it. But then immediately turning to well, I don't know why they said that, and I may never know, but it's better, I can't control what they just said or did. I'd rather them just let them be human, let them be people, and say and do what they're going to do independent of me, and continue to try and just take care of myself and live the best possible life that I can. And maybe someday they'll come around. Maybe someday they'll say sorry, maybe they'll retract what they said, or maybe they'll apologize for what they did. But even if they don't, it still doesn't change the fact that you can't change what they did. They're humans, they're on this earth having the same exact experience as us. It's everyone's first try, and they're allowed to make mistakes and fault and sin just as much as you are. They need their mercy. They need mercy just as much as we do. And who are you to deprive that of them? It isn't right to judge. So why would you judge them for hurting you? That's what we signed up for ultimately, as we all knew that we were going to come down here, be imperfect, and we were going to hurt each other, by accident or on purpose, doesn't matter. But whatever that person does or whatever anyone does to you, as long as you are faithful and, devout to what you believe and to God, and who's given you all your many blessings and given you this life, you can't lose your reward on their account, So those are a lot of the things that I think come to my mind first off when I'm going through something, or when I feel those feelings come over me.
Yeah. I love that. Do you think that the happiest you've ever been is the happiest you'll ever be?
Oh, that's a good question. No.
I was hoping your answer would be no.
Because obviously, you think of just getting to heaven, I think of the great reunion with our Savior. That's obviously, I think, the climax, the culminating point to our lives, whenever that is. And I hope to prepare myself to have a good one, because obviously how you live your life depends on what that reunion interaction is going to be. But no, obviously I don't.
Awesome. I hope that your answer will always be no.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up the podcast, you mentioned earlier that you had this experience where, your 14-year-old self could see you now, right? So my question is, what would it take for you, Wes, now to be proud of Wes at 70 years old? What does that life look like?
Well, again, I think we have a lot of preconceived notions and ideas of what a successful person looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, and maybe a lot of people that are in the LDS gospel, that's in a house, maybe at Christmas or sometime at a family reunion where you have your wife and you're surrounded by like 100 grandkids, and everything's just happy and whatever. So obviously I think like my 70-year-old self, like that's something I'd love to have or whatever. But again, like you don't know. And I think a lot of those expectations you could have could deprive you of the experience you're having right now. I mean, even for myself, like when I came home from my mission and I was 20 years old, I was like, man, I'm getting married in the first year. And every year after that, I was single or another failed relationship or whatever it may be, because that expectation was just so ingrained in the front of my mind. It deprived a lot of the experiences that I had during that time. It took away from the relationships that I did have and the things that I learned from those people, the things that I was going through, like my time at Snow, my time at BYU or whatever, because I was so focused on like, man, I have to get married. Like it doesn't help that my little brother got married when he was right out of high school, and I've kind of just been looked at as the outcast, or just, I'm doing something wrong. Like I assure you, I've turned over my fair share of rocks. Like I'm out here trying. But it doesn't have to dictate what kind of experience you're having in the moment, and just prepare yourself to try and be worthy of those blessings, like whenever they come. And so I feel like, I don't know, I can't really put a label on like, will I be proud of myself, or not. But I know if I keep following the script and the regimen, the recipe, that I feel like I have a good idea of what creates a joyful life now, that I'll prepare myself that to be proud of myself then. So
awesome. I love it. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story and your insights and thoughts, and proud to call you a friend and proud of who you are as a man. So thank you.
No, thank you so much, Jason. I'm glad that you started out doing this, and I think I told you this at the football game, that this is an endeavor that not a lot of people would embark on. There's other things you could be doing with your time. You have a wife and kids upstairs, and you could be spending your time with them, but you spend enough time with them, and you realize the need, a necessity amongst a dying, starving breed of kids like me, of other fathers out there that are looking around for anything that they can, like, help them. So for you to answer that call, I think is so very commendable. I hope you continue to do it. I'm grateful that you had me on tonight, and I hope it goes to the moon, man. And you don't let anything or anyone discourage you. Because again, like, you're endeavoring to do something that not a lot of other people would be willing to undertake. So thank you so much.